One of the most valuable lessons I learned, and I learned it over time, was that I must accept where I am right now. If I don't accept where I am right now, I'll never get to where I want to be. I'll get stuck or I'll give up. Writer Unleashed is for you, a writer who has a story you want to bring onto the page and into the hearts and minds of readers. I'm Nancy Panuccio, writer, editor, and writing coach. And each week, we'll explore techniques, mindsets, and inspiration for writing stories readers can't put down. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let's begin. Now that we're in a brand new year, it's a good time to recalibrate and think of what worked in the past year, what didn't work, and most importantly, what we can do differently to move the needle forward in 2025. Time is a precious resource, and we don't want to squander it or spin in the wrong direction again and again. But this is most often an inside job, and there are some mindset shifts that we need to make in order to really make a difference as we move into a new year with new resolve to finish our story, to write the story and not keep writing in circles and circles and getting nowhere. So in this episode, I'm going to share some mindset shifts to help you along. So let's get right to it. Number one, start from where you are. Everyone in any endeavor starts from where they are. And this is true of any art form. You wouldn't expect to play Chopin on the piano without years and years of training. You wouldn't expect to dance with the Rockettes without decades of training. You wouldn't run a marathon without training. So why don't we expect the same of our writing? I often tell the story about my first attempt at writing a novel when I was about 22 or 23, and how unrealistic my expectations were. I'd always gotten praise for my writing. I'd read plenty of novels. I thought I had a story worth telling. I thought, how hard could it be? Now, at this point, all I had was the desire and the drive. I hadn't even taken a writing workshop yet. Sure, I'd written stories in grade school, and I'd written plenty of essays in university, but I didn't know diddly about the art and craft of story writing. And I didn't know that I didn't know. And when I realized how awful I was, I gave up. I was starting from where I thought I should be or where I wanted to be instead of where I was right then, which was an absolute beginner. Even though I had written plenty of stories, compositions, essays, I knew I loved to write. I knew I was good at it. But when it came to fiction writing, I was a tenderfoot. So any endeavor starts from where you are, not where you think you should be or where you'd rather be. And this is not just for beginners. It's whatever stage in your development or whatever stage of your story you're currently in. It's got to start from here. Where you are now is exactly where you need to be. One of the most valuable lessons I learned, and I learned it over time, was that I must accept where I am right now. If I don't accept where I am right now, I'll never get to where I want to be. I'll get stuck or I'll give up. That's what happened in my early 20s. There was a disconnect between where I thought I was and where I actually was, which was a beginner. And because I couldn't accept where I was, I thought I was no good. So I gave up. Now, when you work from where you are, you have room to grow. And here's the best part about all of this. You're less likely to find fault in your work. You're less likely to beat yourself up or critique it or use where you think you should be as a condemnation of your worth as a writer. So always start where you are right now. Don't beat yourself up just because your vision of the story isn't yet showing up on the page. Always start from where you are. If you can do that, you have room to grow. Okay, number 2, approach your work with curiosity. Often writers are wedded to a certain formula. It might be the hero's journey or save the cat. That's a very popular structure my clients use. But the thing with these beat sheets and steps or stages is that they come from a finished work that's been dissected. It doesn't come from the writing itself. So they're better as diagnostic tools after you've gotten some pages written. Not the whole book necessarily, but once you've had some pages written and you've explored what you have to say, you can use these structures as a diagnostic tool rather than a plug and play story blueprint. So you want to follow those structures loosely. Don't think of them as a paint by numbers blueprint. Structure is dynamic. And when you adhere too religiously to these off-the-shelf structures, the tendency is just to write a series of events rather than write from the experience of the characters affected by what happens and how they're changed as a result. This also often leads to manufactured or exaggerated conflict. And what I've found with some writers who are following a certain blueprint is that they write just about what happens. This happens, then this happened, then this, and so on. And they tell more than they show. They tell us what we should think about the story or how we should feel. But structure is not a formula. It's a way of thinking our way through our story. It's how we organize our thoughts, our feelings, and our instincts about the story, whether those thoughts and feelings are conscious or not. Sometimes I'll give my coaching clients a set of questions to think about to help them go deeper into the emotional structure of their story or to get at the problem their main character must solve and the beliefs that are holding them back. Now, some writers can answer these pretty easily. Others struggle. Some writers overthink these or they make it more complicated than it has to be. But when you approach your work with curiosity, rather than trying to figure it all out, that's where the magic happens. It's where you find ease in writing the story. Okay, on to number 3. Hold your ideas about your story loosely. You want to avoid deciding what the story must be or what must happen to hit certain beats or to fill in a preconceived outline. Now, many writers believe that an outline is a prerequisite, that you have to have all the moving pieces plotted out before you can write the story. And many writers work best this way. I once worked with a writer who had her whole story outlined in narrative form, and she also had narrative outlines for each of her characters' journeys. She really knew her story. She inhabited it before she even wrote a single word. And when she finally sat down to write, the story was extraordinary. The writing was exceptional because she had really thought about and explored her own relationship to her story material. It was a fantasy novel that took place in medieval times, but she knew deep down what she was exploring through her material. She knew what it was she was personally trying to learn or trying to figure out, the questions she was trying to probe. Some writers come to me with an idea they have for their story, and through our work together, they're able to crystallize the central story problem and to really know the main characters so they can start to think structurally. So only having written and explored their material can they start to outline what's already on the page. Most writers I coach have some kind of outline at the start, or they've taken their raw material and created a narrative outline of what's already on the page. I think it's always a good idea at any stage to look at what you've written and write a narrative outline of what's already there on the page at this point in the writing. It's a great way to get your arms around your own material and see if there's a progressive movement and momentum to the story in its current development. But sometimes an outline gets in the way of writing the story because too many decisions have been made before the actual writing. Now, some decisions are necessary. You need to know who your main character is, who we're going to follow throughout the story. We need to know what he or she wants and why. And we also need to know what's getting in the way of him or her getting it. But these do become more crystallized as you write. It's an evolving process. In fact, most writers I work with who come to me with an outline first wind up with a totally different story once they start writing, once they start exploring their story. So you want to approach your story with curiosity. If you're following a certain structure, you follow it loosely so you can make room for discovery and surprise. Structure is dynamic. It's not a fixed blueprint. So here are a few points I want to leave you with as you head into the new year. Number 1, start where you are, not where you think you should be or where you want to be. Number 2, approach your work in progress, whatever stage you're at, with inquiry, with curiosity, rather than thinking you have to have all the answers at the outset before you sit down to write it. And number 3, structure is dynamic. It's not something that's fixed. It evolves. Your story is a living thing. It's not static. So allow your story to breathe so you can bring more energy and life to it. Don't cling too tightly to an outline or a preconceived template. Allow your works in progress to evolve and deepen. So there you have it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And if you know any writers who need some support in their writing, please share this episode or the Writer Unleashed podcast in general. And if you love what you're listening to, subscribe on your favorite listening platform and please leave me a review. Reading how this podcast impacts your writing truly lights me up and helps me create topics for the show. Till next time, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon.